Well, this is the last thing that we're going to do before we go into the post game, which you definitely want to join us for. We're going to be, breaking down some of these. James Connolly, you want to talk about somebody who's a good writer, points out hypocrisy very well. You'll definitely want to check that out. We're be teasing a little bit our interview that will be coming out on Sunday with Paul O'Connell, which you definitely will want to catch. We're going to be taking questions from the Discord. We're going to be talking about everyone's favorite apartheid enriched techno wizard Elon Musk and his attempts to try to, at this point, like I feel like I'm on the front lines trying to defend, like I'm on the front lines of like the Alamo trying to defend against an army of Elon Musks as they try to like conquer the state of Texas. We'll be talking about a little bit of that during the bump steer of the week. So definitely join us like for that in the post game at patreon.com/left reckoning. But before we do that, we need to make this point. It's a pretty quick one, but we want to outline how absurd this is. We're living through a global pandemic, one in which what we need to see right now is not just, at this point, it is getting very clear that the global capital system was not going to have some kind of a reckoning where it started taking care of folks or start caring about folks. So we're just going to talk on the logic of self-interest. This system should want to make sure that as many people as possible have immunity from this virus so we can stop the spread. But as in many things in capitalism, there is a significant contradiction here, because in capitalism, which is a system that functions for one purpose, which is making as much profit as possible, providing everybody with access to the vaccine creates a big problem, because it means that massive pharmaceutical companies cannot make as much money as possible. And do we have this tweet handy, Matt?
Yeah, I'll put it up right now.
So this is coming from Progressive International, and also Matt Huber, who's definitely a good follow on Twitter, has a good line here. But Progressive International cites global vaccine distribution: rich countries 86%, poor countries 0.1%. And Matt makes the point here: this is insane and not even in the rich countries' interests. It's all about protecting pharma patent monopolies, which is exactly what it is. And we were seeing this kind of, the Biden administration is having conversations about maybe lifting some of the restrictions on intellectual property to make sure that other countries can have access to the vaccine. Absolutely ghoulish to even be having this conversation, but it should expose to folks who are still confused about this for whatever reason how beholden our system of government is to the interests of a small but extremely powerful and resource rich group of people, namely pharmaceutical companies in this instance, and how beholden our government is to those interests.
Yeah, look at the perverse incentives there, right? Like these companies are going to make huge bank on these vaccines, and if COVID just gallops around poor countries and develops into new variants that make them have to rejigger their vaccines, maybe that's even more money, and that is the problem, right? Like we already have seen new strains, and that came when, frankly, like we weren't expecting to get the vaccine as early, so we could, like, the idea that we're just going to let new strains just proliferate around the world because the Gates Foundation said we might want to put a lid on this, and it's not, obviously I don't mean to just say the Gates Foundation just because they got the headline. Like this is the entire system, right? Like, and that framing of the Biden thing, that we're considering it, that was the default position early on. There was a lot of talk of we of course should just release. I mean, that was in the heady early days of the pandemic where it was the march towards socialism, and then these companies reassert themselves.
Well, I really want to paint this very clear to folks. We talked about, maybe a couple episodes ago, how like the United States in particular uses its incredible imperial power to implement intellectual property regimes across the globe. when it is very much like an American system of like allowing certain corporations to be able to just have control over scientific discoveries, right? It's a very capitalist thing, but in the way that it's been developed and sort of like forced across the rest of the world, it's a very American thing. And what we're seeing right now is the United States, one, making sure that these, IPs are respected, but the arguments that we're getting from the pharmaceutical companies is even more perverse. They're saying, even if we gave our, designs to other countries, they wouldn't be able to develop the vaccine because we also own the patents on all of the other medical and scientific equipment that would be necessary to protect people and to produce things like vaccines on a mass scale, right? So, their argument for why we shouldn't we shouldn't, release the patents basically is even more perverse because they're saying, oh, because if we release the patents, then we'd also have to provide the rest of the globe with critical medical technology and medical knowledge and scientific knowledge. By the way, in large part developed and funded by the United States government.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, if we help them out with the vaccines, then they might also be able to use this technology to provide the people in their country with vaccines for other things like
Yeah.
malaria
I feel like the
or
Bernie Sanders meme, the yeah, okay, good.
yeah. It's something that it's one of these things where it's like I'm happy to give free advice to our opponents in these kind of moments because it's just like for Biden, if they wanted to improve America's image around the world and American soft power, providing a massive access to American intellectual property, which for the large part was one funded by the U.S. government, and a lot of times too was basically lifted from other countries through either overt or covert means. What better way to create goodwill and deal with a global pandemic again, which will only get worse if you allow this virus to spread unabated in other countries. Because just for people like I ain't no scientist, so I don't want to overstep my boundary here, but basically the argument is that not only is it immoral to let the virus just run rampant around the rest of the world, but as the virus spreads from host to host, it evolves,
Every
and that's
time.
how you get those mutations that could eventually get to a point where they are the vaccine is no longer able to prevent new infections, right? So you just like don't want it to run unimpeded across the globe. One, you should not want that on like a human being scale, but again, we're not talking about people who have very human consciousness. You would just on a self-interest level, you don't want it to run unabated because it means that all of the work that has been done to prevent it from spreading in certain countries, it could just be undone with some new mutation.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of Warren in the primaries talking about climate change and protecting American IP. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, the green capital.
and it's like, we need to bring back. We should maybe. I should do some research on the Pirate Party because I remember back in the old day, like that was one of the most radical, like the
Mhm.
cool things coming out of Sweden because they defended the Pirate Bay's right to exist, basically. And but that is righteous. That shit
Yeah.
is righteous because, like, yeah, like we're gonna fight climate change by protecting IP. Absolutely not. If China
Yeah.
makes a breakthrough, I want us to know about it. If we make a breakthrough, I want China to know about it and whoever, right? Like it's absurd. It's the height of absurdity that that personal and like a company-wide lust for profit would get in the way of actually like propagated ideas that can save the fucking planet.
Yep.
And that's literally what's happening here with this vaccine stuff too. I mean, I don't know. I'm tired of all these examples of just the absurdity of the system, like the globally catastrophic absurdity of it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, and again, we're not even talking about making things fair. We're just trying to protect things from getting worse at this point.
Right.
Uh, oh Lord.